Welcome to Thrive, your agency resource, the only podcast for creative, media, and technology leaders who are ready to dive deeper into conscious leadership and agency growth. I'm your host, Kelly Campbell. Thrive is brought to you by Accessiby, the leading web accessibility solutions provider. Join thousands of agencies that are already incorporating web inclusivity into their service offerings. Visit accessiby.com today. We are back with another episode of Thrive. Last time, Jason Debiak shared his journey from founder to lead designer to chief creative officer at Paper Tiger. If that sounds similar to your journey, definitely check out that episode and let me know how you liked it. Today, though, I'm talking with Caleb Clark, who's the co-founder of a Canadian digital agency called Hook and Ladder. And we're going to talk about his people-first approach to agency leadership, which, of course, everyone knows is very near and dear to my heart. Caleb, a warm welcome to Thrive. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode.
Thank you very much. It's so good to be here. I appreciate it, Kelly.
So your UVP, from what I could tell on the website and other conversations, your UVP is really that Hook and Ladder is sort of an extension of an in-house marketing team that has about 1 to 3 full-time employees, right, at different national and international brands. How did you kind of land on that specificity in terms of your positioning and, you know, sort of the unique value that you bring to the market?
Yeah, it's my partner and I and some other members of our team. I think it was just kind of in the middle of COVID or probably pretty early in COVID, actually. We just sat down and had a little bit of extra time on our hands. So we just mapped out all of our client partners on a whiteboard and said, what are some of the common threads amongst the clients here that we really feel fulfilled in working with? And we just kind of started coming up with this list together. It was a co-created list amongst the team, and we got perspectives from, you know, everybody on our team in terms of what are these different criteria points. And we landed on, you know, their established brand that is still pursuing growth. So that means, you know, you wouldn't call yourself an established brand if you're a brand new startup just trying to get market validation. That was one thing. But they weren't also, you know, slowing down growth or becoming complacent. They still were fairly aggressive. Second thing is that they value co-creation and collaboration. And the third thing is that they have, you know, an internal marketing team. Otherwise, our ability to integrate and to kind of get the most out of their team members as well gave us a really good competitive sort of edge, I think, as it related to some of their other past partners where it was more transactional. So some of these different threads, and there are more, sort of defined our model client. And so our first action was to, you know, part ways with some partners that we were working with for a long time.
Yes, thank you for saying that.
Which is it's a scary feeling sometimes, but it's quite liberating, and it actually signals to your team, you know, that you're fairly serious about working with the types of partners that make their lives easier on a day-to-day and more enjoyable, really. So that's what we did, and we're more of a digital marketing department for hire that becomes a part of your team. So a lot of the meetings we find ourselves in have nothing to do with marketing. They're sales or operations conversations, so that we can weave that function into those things.
Yeah, it's so smart. And I liked how you just kind of framed all of that. One of the things that kind of bubbled up, you know, to the surface for me in that conversation or what you just explained was collaboration. It can be a little bit hard to suss out who are going to be those collaborative brands or even contacts within those in-house marketing teams. But it sounds like that is one of the core values at your agency. So my question is, what are the other core values of the agency? And is there complete crossover with your own personal core values?
That's a good question. And going through the exercise of developing core values is an interesting one, because I think the temptation for most groups is to go up there, write them on a board, and sort of almost dictate them down to the group. These are our core values. But we, similar to that exercise of that client roster analysis, we just took an inventory of what are we already doing, like what are the common threads that we're already doing amongst our team of about 24 people. And we co-created that experience. So we came out with 4 things that very much are alive with everyone and are consistent with the way my partner and myself handle business. So the first one is shoulder to shoulder. You know, we hold the line together and for each other. Being trustworthy, establishing trust scores, that type of thing. So that's the first one. The second one is evolve or evaporate. So, you know, thirst for new heights, being hungry for whatever the next journey is. And that's a big part of our staff model too, where everyone knows that they have the opportunity, if they want, to be the CEO of the agency or run the agency in some regard. Bullets, then cannonballs is the third one. So, you know, take a shot, readjust or calibrate for distance and aim. And then once you have empirical evidence, say on a funnel campaign or something like that, then blow it open with a cannonball. And then get stuff done and get shit done is make real tangible impacts, getting things done, stop starting and start finishing, that type of thing. So those 4 are very much alive, and we lean on them pretty heavily. In our weekly huddles, we always make an effort to, you know, if we're sharing an example of a win or a challenge, we're trying to cross section with how it relates to the value. So it's cool because I was very skeptical and hesitant about talking about core values. I felt it was a bit fluffy, but these are real, and sort of proud to say that.
So that's interesting. I'm glad you just said that. What was the shift for you? How did you go from this is a bit fluffy to this is real? What was the mindset shift, or was there like a thing or somebody said something? What happened for you to make that shift?
Yeah, it was 2 things that stick out. Might have been a couple more, but 2 things stick out. One of them was the nature in which they were developed. It was a group team conversation, and it was simply a taking stock or an inventory list of what already exists. Maybe it's not a very strong muscle, but what already exists. And it was contributed by, you know, basically the core team, and none of these were these are our core values. And then there was one comment from an individual on our team that was referencing some past corporate experiences he was in, and just, you know, the way he talked about this feeling very real. And it's like, these are legitimate core values. I feel like I could actually be proud about saying that these are our core values, where other things are like integrity, you know, trust. These are just words. And so when we turned them into phrases and saw that they were actually alive, that's when it became real. That's
fascinating. Okay. That's really interesting. I don't know that I would have pointed to the difference between just a singular word and a phrase or something that has a little bit of action. When I've done core values work with some of my agency clients, they do always turn into phrases, but I don't know that I ever correlated that. So thank you. That's really fascinating. But I also hear that you really listened, like you were in a stance of listening to that employee to say, oh, you know, this is real for me.
Yeah. And the reason why we did that, honestly, I mean, I guess I can only speak for myself, is that I was fearful and scared about the potential of us saying, here are our core values, and other people saying, you know, this is
not
lame. Yeah, exactly. So I was like, well, what's the best way to circumvent that? Let's just have it be created by the team. You know, people support what they help create, and that goes into our focus on collaboration when we're looking for clients. Like people support what they help create, and they will own what they help create. And if they don't have a hand in creating that, then it's going to be, maybe we get out of the core value session with our list, but they're not going to be real, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Did you know that 1 out of 5 people in the US is living with some form of disability? I'm proud to partner with Accessity as they work toward the mission of making the web accessible to everyone. It's time to prioritize inclusivity. Ensure that your own website and your client sites can be accessed by all, and that they're ADA compliant. Head over to accessity.com/thrive to learn more about their agency partner program. Now, back to the show. So the whole sort of theme of this conversation is, a people first agency leadership, right? If we just had to encapsulate it. So why for you, I'm curious, why people first versus client first or profit first?
Profit is easy to generate, and people and relationships and strong self-led teams are very difficult. So it wouldn't make sense, at least for us, to put something that's easier to generate before the other, right? And clients are important, they're critically important, but also clients, there's a lot of opportunity out there, and so we see that as being less important as well, right? I hope no clients are listening to this. We love you, clients.
Well, here's the thing though. I like how you said that. It's about what's most difficult to generate is what you're leaning into first, the
Right.
relationships, right? All of that. And so I don't think that clients are separate from that, but they
No.
certainly have to take a second seat,
Yeah.
right? Because yes, employees can come and go, just like clients can come and go.
Yeah.
But there's a very big difference between a client who is partnering with your agency and an employee who is a part of your team.
Totally.
It's just a different feeling, right? There's something
Totally.
that's more intimate about it.
And like we're a service-based company, right? I mean, there's some unique processes and philosophies that we take in terms of developing digital marketing systems. But at the end of the day, a funnel is a funnel, an ad campaign is an ad campaign, email campaigns an email campaign. And so our people are obviously the most important asset. They are the fuel and the engine that makes this thing go. And so if we're not doing everything we can to be people first, then we really are a commodity in my mind.
Mm-hmm. The C word. Nobody wants to be a commodity.
Yeah.
What I also heard about your agency is that you've got a pretty interesting hiring process. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, because I'm imagining that it's going to be obviously very, very people focused and leaning into how can you best support them in their roles.
There's probably some similarities that are held by some of your audience, but first thing is pretty simple. It's just kind of a get to know you, Chad, right? Just kind of see if there's a high level cultural fit. And there's a couple conversations with like myself, my partner, our director of people and culture.
Sorry to interrupt you, when you say culture fit, I just want to clarify that a little bit. What do you actually mean by that? Because that phrase is a little charged. So
yeah, and we can't actually. Well, that's why I say high level culture fit, because it's impossible on an initial conversation to see how strong the cultural ties are, because people are people, and they might be nervous on an initial call or whatever. But if someone's coming on there, and you can just kind of get the sense of the things that they care about. We ask them about their history, their family, what's important to them, these types of things, and you can kind of gauge. We've very rarely said, hey, this is not a culture fit. There was one scenario where a guy came on and he was chewing and spitting tobacco and swearing and all this stuff, and it was just it was weird. And so that was the only one I remember. So that's that. And then we go through a business case exercise where let's say we're hiring for an account lead. We would draw up a scenario and sort of say, 48 hours or 3 days from now, what would be your response? And don't give them a ton of parameters, but give them enough to feel that they have a sandbox to play within. And then in every case where we've hired someone, they've taken this exercise seriously, and it's been meaningful to them, and their responses have been meaningful. And so that's the second step. And then the third one is we are a Clifton Strengths organization. So we believe that everyone has their individual zones of genius and their areas of strength in which they leverage these top 5 strengths to win in their day and to get things done in a sort of a flow state way. So we explained very clearly that Clifton Strengths Assessment there's no right or wrong. You can't fail this test. But it's more so at this point about how do we understand their strengths so we can cultivate or create the remainder of this hiring process such that it's feels more natural and comfortable to them. And people really, really enjoy that. And then once we make the decision to hire them, then we get together as a team and break bread together a little bit, and have some food and drinks, and just kind of get all that initial awkwardness and conversation out, and see how they engage with the team and in a team environment. And then so that's when they're hired, and then basically about a week or 2 weeks of onboarding training takes place. There's some videos for them to watch. We have a team lunch, another team lunch together. And then, it's all about then leaning pretty heavily into Clifton strengths and how do we build their scorecard, co-create their scorecard with them, all these types of things. So
yeah, okay, very interesting. So I heard values alignment, a little bit of a test.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hope that it comes across as a test, but it is. I mean, at the end of the day, like, we do still need to. It's very difficult to find high quality people out there because they're all, they all have other opportunities, and so we have to make sure. And so we have to do that due diligence for our.
And then strengths and weaknesses, sort of assessment, if you will, and then really leaning into that, creating the relationship. It is a very interesting process. It's not like completely divergent from some of the process that some of my clients have, but these again are all people-centric agencies as well.
And then the final thing on that is that we're really dead serious about structuring the role to the person versus person to the role. And so when I talked about that scorecard, it's like, okay, well, the function is account leadership, but there's a lot of different flavors of account leadership. So what feels right to you? And then let's weave that into your scorecard that basically helps us stay on track. So there's a lot of different approaches to the same function, whereas I think we miss out on so much of a person's natural zones of genius and strength when the role is encapsulated in a box and it's kind of forced.
Yeah. Right. I think that goes for anything, right? Just you trying to fit something that isn't really like a square, right? Round peg in a square hole situation. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's not that you're changing the entire org chart or roles and responsibilities of each particular position, right? Yeah. You're just adapting it slightly so that it's aligned with the personality traits and all of that for each individual, which again, yeah, I think it shouldn't be fascinating, right? But because of the way that we've historically done business, it is a unique approach. I'm hoping that more and more organizations, not just agencies, but more and more workplaces in general, start to understand that is, the future of business, if you will.
Without going too over the top here, I think this process,
it's not possible on the show.
in some respects, this process has changed many components of my life, because I have to be totally honest with you, and I was pretty against a lot of our process as it relates to finding and hiring and supporting people. It sounds crazy to say that. I was very much so like, hey, listen, we are the prize to be won. This is the role. It's your job to figure it out, and just figure it out. And it's embarrassing, to be honest.
No, so I'm really thrilled that you're being so candid about it.
Whereas really, they are the prize to be won. I mean, we have organized ourselves into a scenario or to an organization that gives them some opportunity that maybe they wouldn't get elsewhere. But that's it. Like, this is a platform for being able to demonstrate, evolve, or evaporate, one of our core values. But they have options, and they're the prize to be won. So I've changed completely in terms of people first mindset.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
That is 100%.
So it's possible.
It is possible, and you need, sometimes it's key people internally to really champion that. In our case, it was Eliana Torregrosa, and she's our director of people and culture, and just like heart-led leadership. And so I just have been taking notes for the last 4 or 5 years on how to do this, and it has changed many components of my life.
I'm curious to know, yes, it seems like it's changed the way that you view the organization, the people within it. How has it changed your personal relationships?
my personal relationships, it has changed through, so I've been, obviously you do a lot of your own reading and your own learning, sharpening your own sword, but the Coaching Habit is a book that I picked up, and just, listening with the intent to listen, not listening with the intent to
reply.
Get your reply ready. And so being a little bit more mindful of that, and unbelievable what you learn actually when you just listen. It's just so funny. And even sometimes when you listen back to recordings, you're like, I didn't hear that in the moment, but I hear it now because I'm listening. So that's one thing for sure. Clifton Strengths. I mean, this whole idea of that we don't really have weaknesses necessarily. It's not about fixing your weaknesses. That's one thing that I've learned with relationships, like with my wife and my parents. It's one of my core strengths, or one of my top 5 Clifton Strengths, is restorative, which is, it's great, but there's also a bad side to that, and that I want to fix everything and fix everybody. And so understanding that it's not about fixing weaknesses, is about going full court press with the top 5 things that make you flow. And so that's been huge for my relationships with brothers, wife, parents.
Yeah, beautiful. So you just gave me 2 or 3, but what would be sort of your final piece of advice for agency owners who aren't still quite convinced that the key to a sustainable business is to lean very deeply into this people first approach?
Yeah, I mean, if you like profit, you can split test, and I know but like at some point you got to be getting tired as an agency owner being the linchpin to everything, right? My final piece of advice is, it is a bit of a trust fall, but you have to jump into it in terms of, do you like profit or do you not like profit? And if you like profit and growth, you have to create an army of people. Like, you can stop one person, but you can't stop a team of people. And so when you get that flywheel spinning as it relates to the foundation of people, then it's almost impossible to stop you.
Caleb, thank you so much. I really, really love this conversation. I love just, how we kind of organically flowed with this approach that you take to agency leadership. And I think it's really, really beautiful for the sake of sounding a little woo-woo, but I really appreciate that you are honest, about your journey with it. The fact that you really railed against this at some point, and then kind of had these aha moments through, really listening to some of the people that you've brought onto the team, and just seeing firsthand that this is really the way of the future and the present.
Sorry, I left you with something. I do want to give one other piece of advice. I totally forgot about this. But, this is more of a practical takeaway that was huge for us in terms of pivoting to this people first.
Yeah, please.
And it was very simple, and it was radical financial transparency. So we adopted a program called the Great Game of Business, which is basically everybody on the team is assigned ownership of a different line on the P&L, and ownership both in reporting on the weekly numbers, but also identifying ways to, if you're a revenue line owner, increase that. If you're an expense line owner, decrease that. But what it does more so is it builds this innate foundation of trust, because everybody sees what happens to a dollar. And when people are given that access, and then they start to adopt a different understanding, right? It's not I'm helping make Tony and Caleb a lot of profit. It's I see where every dollar goes, and there's a profit share component at the end of it. So it's a team of leaders, and you can't just say we want to be people first. You gotta do something to actually open the commode a little bit.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you again, my friend. I really appreciate this, and I will talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe wherever you watch or listen. And a final note of gratitude to the official sponsor of Thrive, Accessiby, the leading web accessibility solutions provider. Learn more about the win-win proposition and keep your clients' websites inclusive and compliant. Be sure to check out their partner program for your agency today at accessiby.com/thrive.